Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. I, like always, am your host, Rusty Ellis, joined by just one of the boys today, Matt. I would say it's been a minute since we've gotten to do some solo episodes, just me and you. But to be honest, we just recorded one, so I can't cap there. We just recorded one, and I feel like we've done a couple to start the year. I know we did Fire Emblem Engage. We're talking about no surprise here, talking about a Nintendo release. It's one that kind of got off to a tumultuous start, but I feel like the supply chain issues have kind of been figured out because the last time I went into Walmart, which was yesterday at this point, there were actually plenty of copies of this game available for purchase. So we are talking about the Metroid Prime Remaster. Matt, you played the original. I'm assuming if you didn't, I'll be shocked. I'm not going to lie.
I did.
Okay, good. I wouldn't have expected anything less. I would have been really worried if you had not, because you're Mr. Nintendo in this podcast. So, Matt, first of all, let's talk about when this game was announced, because it pretty much got shadow dropped the day that it was revealed. It got shadow dropped digitally, and then they said a few weeks later it would release physically, and we'll get into the supply chain stuff and all that after. How excited were you for this? Because I was excited. I've never played Metroid Prime. I've only Metroid game I've ever played was Metroid Dread. I didn't love it. Spoiler alert: I love this game a whole lot more. How excited were you for this when it got announced?
Well, all things considering, for the past 2.5 years, these insiders have been teasing Metroid Prime Trilogy coming to the Switch to get people who have never experienced a Prime game, or fans who have, but it's been so long since those came out, to give them the chance to get caught up for the inevitable release of Metroid Prime 4. So, especially every video game awards that pass by, there's always these rumors that this is the night that it's going to get announced. I mean, Jeff Grubb said on Twitter, he was like, Metroid Prime Remaster is probably going to be announced before the end of the year, and if it doesn't, I'm going to shave my head. He shaves his head, and then literally 2 months later, Nintendo drops that Direct. They dropped that shadow drop with Metroid Prime. I was watching the Direct, like, in my empty room in the process of moving, and they dropped that, and I about dropped my phone because I was like, it's real. And that trailer showed up, and I have, like, pretty good memory about how Metroid Prime on the GameCube is probably one of the best looking games at the time. It was up there because it was pushing the GameCube, and I was amazed with what they pulled off here on the Switch. Like, no, it's not in 4K. It's not comparable to what you see on the PlayStation 5 or even PlayStation 4. But the fact that I was seeing this for the first time and how good it looked, how clean it looked, like Retro Studios outdid their original vision, and I could not have been more happier with what we got.
Absolutely. This remaster is so good. It's had some people. It's created the discussion of, is this a remaster or is it a remake? And I think that obviously very clearly a remaster for a couple reasons. One, it says so on the box. Just gonna, that's the first part. And two, it doesn't. I don't know, and Matt, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't feel like this has really added much to the original product of Metroid Prime. I feel like obviously it's enhanced it, better controls. It obviously performs better visually, graphically. It's better. But I think that also goes to show that a game can be called a remaster and it be a very positive thing to say. When you call this game a remaster, this is one of the best remasters in recent memory. I would say going back all the way to the Last of Us remaster on PS4. Like, this is probably one of the best remasters done of all time, and it looks fantastic on the Switch. One of the best looking games on Switch, 100%. Runs really well. There's not very many performance glitches, performance bugs. It's a very clean game. And Matt, the best part of all of this, before we get into the game itself, despite the supply chain issues, bro, it was only $40.
Yes.
Only $40, man.
Yep, that was an incredible decision. Because, I mean, you have Kirby Deluxe that just came out for $60.
That's a great comparison, yes.
And when you look at these two games, like, it is night and day. Like, Metroid Prime Remaster straight up looks like a current gen at the Switch game, I'll say. And, like, they didn't really do all that much with Kirby, but, like, pricing it at $40 was genius, and I think that it's not just because of the fact that I think one of the reasons why they did price it at 40 is Metroid is not one of Nintendo's biggest series. Like Metroid Dread sold incredibly well for the franchise, but before that, like the highest selling game was Metroid Prime back on the GameCube.
That's
Not
wild
even
to think about, man,
yeah,
because I know people love Metroid. That is wild to
yeah,
think about.
yeah. So yeah, when they announced it to me $40, I was like, you know what? I mean, I'm going to say this right now. I would have paid 60 for it. I'm
I
glad
think
that
so.
they priced it
I
at
would
40,
have too.
but I think that it could definitely have been justified at 60, especially if they're going to price Kirby at that much.
Yeah, it definitely raises the eyebrows a little bit as far as like why was Kirby 60? Like
Skyward Sword.
or Skyward Sword, like why were all these 60? Why did they draw the line at Metroid for it to not be 60? Like I would have 100% paid 60 for this. I think it's a great remaster and it does everything a remaster is supposed to do. Obviously, the biggest negative with this game, we'll get this negative out of the way early just because we want to actually gush about this game because it's awesome. Obviously, the launch was not a clean launch. And that's putting it very mildly because a lot of people were told they would not get their copies if you pre-ordered online through, and this is just on the physical side of things. Digitally, the game released without a hitch. Of course it did. But if you pre-ordered like through Amazon or GameStop or, Walmart or something like that, there were a lot of people that the day of release were getting emails and were getting updates saying like, hey, you're probably not getting your copy until middle of March or the beginning of April. Like there were a lot of people that were fully expecting to not get their game until a month and a half or so, past the release date. And I think that's absurd. I've given my story before of, I pre-ordered physically from my GameStop here, went in person, and, I knew that it was going to be a hot commodity and that it was going to be really, really hard to get one of these physically right away. Seems like that is less so the case now because, again, at Walmart yesterday when I went, there was 2 full rows fully stocked in their cases of them, which I think is great. I love that it's widely available now. But I did not get my copy until 5 days after the release, and my GameStop said they called me to tell me it was in. They 100% did not call me, and I've got proof that they didn't. And who knows if they had not called me? They told me when I called the first time asking about it that it was going to be the following week when I would get it, and then 3 days later they got them in. So imagine, Matt, if I had not called, there's a very real possibility my pre-order would have gotten sold.
Yeah.
And I would have been very, very upset about that, for sure. And after playing the game for the first time ever now, I would have been even more upset because this game is so damn good, Matt. Like, I have to ask, as someone who's played the original, what was the first, like, holy shit, I'm back moment for you in this game?
Oh man, it's pretty much for me. It is when you land on Talon 4, and no, not Talon 4. It's when you land on the space shuttle in the beginning of the
Yes.
game, and Samus's ship lands, and then she, rises up out of the ship. She jumps up, and then you get that first person view from her visor. Which way back when we first saw this in the in Metroid Prime on GameCube, it was just probably one of the most incredible things because nobody could have pictured Metroid being done in a first person perspective because Metroid has always been a side scroller. That's where the Metroidvania type genre came from, side scrolling, fighting these items scattered across the map. But that was a big moment for me, and especially once you beat the Parasite Queen. Ridley shows himself, and then oh my god, you just know it's about to be a big adventure because you get in Samus gets back in her ship and she flies off to Talon 4, chasing Ridley, and then that music kicks in, and Jesus Christ, it was just so nostalgic. It was so amazing just to experience that again, and like this new with these new graphics, I wish I could erase my memory of that moment and get to experience it again.
I agree. I or at least I would agree if I had played the original. Absolutely. This game, I can see why this is considered one of the best games of all time now. I very much do get it now because this is the first game that popularized, or really, this is one of the first examples of the Metroidvania genre. That Metroid or Castlevania type genre where, the map's pretty open. You can go just about wherever you want, but at some point you're going to hit a stopping point because you don't have a piece of equipment that you need to get through a barricade or to get through to the next area or to beat a certain enemy. And Matt, we talked when we were playing it because you were helping me out through a lot of it. The concept of this game and its story is so simple. Yeah. It is very, very. It's literally just go find your gear, find these artifacts. That's pretty much. Unless I'm missing something, Matt, you feel free to tell me if I am. Like it feels very simple, but you also kind of figure it. You pick it up really, really quickly. And the biggest negative in gameplay is, sometimes you might get lost. You might not really know where to go. But man, if you just explore around, you just go through the entire map as far as you can go in every direction, eventually you'll figure out where you need to go. And then it's the most fun I've had in a while exploring a game. And I feel like that says quite a bit that this game has stood up and withstood the test of when did this game first came out? What year did it first release?
I could be wrong, but I think it was around 2001.
Like, you're talking about over 2 decades ago. If that was the year it came out, you're talking about over 2 decades ago. Like, that's impressive that this game has withstood the test of time like that.
Yep, and it has not aged one bit. Like, I know a lot of people who have talked about they don't really like backtracking, but when it comes to Metroid, backtracking is like one of the big things because once you acquire a new item, it's like you almost know instantly where to go. Plus, it did help with this game. Sometimes the map, you would have like a little notification. You pull up the map and it would kind of indicate where you should go. But the game never really tells you where to go. Like, you'll start off, once you land, you'll start off in like these ruins, the Chozo ruined area. And then you'll eventually find yourself, going to the Magmore Caves, which are just like these caves, and it's full of lava. And you're going to see like all these areas you can't access, but you can just know that you're not in the right place right now. So that you need to backtrack and go find a specific upgrade. And one of my favorite things is like once you're in Magmore Caves, and you keep going, you find an elevator that takes you to Financial Drifts, which is like this ice world. And God, the music is so beautiful. I just literally just stopped playing for a minute just to listen to it. And like all the upgrades are not something that are just a waste of time. Every single upgrade is going to be used at some point. Like for me, I kept seeing the spider tracks, and I'm just like, I know what I need, but I just don't know when I'm gonna get it. But I did want to add something as far as to the story goes, where it's just like, you land on Talon 4, you got to find your upgrades, you can eventually find Ridley. But this Metroid Prime introduces the concept of something called Phazon, which is this kind of, basically, on Talon 4, the space pirates are using Phazon to enhance, like, different creatures that are found on this planet, and also to enhance their abilities. And Samus finds the Phazon at some point in the game, and like that's really where all of Metroid Prime is leading up to. Is Phazon is like the big center focal point here. When you first step into it, it does damage you, but you eventually do get a Phazon suit, which is probably one of my favorite suit designs that Samus has ever been given. But yeah, like just the one thing I cannot gush enough about this game is just exploration. Like these levels are so brilliantly made. Like nothing feels like it's a waste of time. Plus, I don't even hate the fact that you can get lost, because that's what Metroid's about.
Yeah.
That's what Metroid is all about. Is you go onto these foreign planets and you're trying to find exactly where it is where you're going. All you really know at this point is you need your upgrades, because that's Samus always gets stripped of her upgrades. I don't know why, but I guess it's like whatever. At this point, we're used to it. And like they even have like they toss in a couple of like boss battles here and there, and like one thing I like about Metroid is that it appeals to the older audience, whereas a lot of Nintendo games, are appeal more to like kids, but Metroid is like one of the more mature themed games franchises that Nintendo has. But it's so accessible. Like if you've ever played a first person shooter, then you're gonna be no stranger to how Metroid plays.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of Doom like. I think I made that comparison with you.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I
Before.
remember that.
It kind of feels like Doom.
I think it's a good comparison, honestly. It does. It feels kind of like a more methodically paced Doom.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it feels like a much slower paced version of Doom, and I love how the combat feels. It doesn't feel dated at all. It doesn't feel like it's stuck in the early 2000s. It feels like a game that came out in 2023. And I'm with you on the exploration. I didn't even get mad the few times I got lost. I was just like, I obviously wanted to figure out where I needed to go, but I also just loved kind of seeing more and more of this planet that I landed on, and the environments, as you said, very, very well crafted, well created. The corridors of enemies, they're very well placed. And it's funny, there are so many parts of the map that you don't even notice until you have an ability to get to some of these places. Like, until I had the space boots, I believe it was, I didn't even notice in that one room that there were platforms that led up. I was so focused on what was in front of me, I didn't even notice that there were some platforms that I could now get to that I couldn't before that were there the whole time. I never noticed it just because I was so focused on what was in front of me. So the exploration is great. I think the best part of this game, 100%, the progression. You feel like you are making really good progression every time you find another piece of equipment, whether it's the boost ball, whether it's the charge beam, whether it's the missiles, whether it's the space boots. You feel like everything you find is helping you more and more. You feel like you're becoming more and more badass. And I love that. I love that, again, a game that came out over about 2 decades ago is still one of the best at progression, and it's still the gold standard of progression, because you don't feel like you get badass just overnight. You get slowly and slowly more badass as it goes, and that's how progression should be done. You shouldn't feel overpowered at any point, and I think that this game nails that. And then obviously, Matt, we have to talk about the boss battles. The boss battles are great. They're awesome. I've loved them, and I've loved how creative they are.
Yep, I do too. There's a couple that I can think of that I really liked. You'll eventually encounter something called like an elite pirate, and just using your regular blaster isn't going to do much to him. Which is what I like about how the different variety of weapons that you get for Samus's handgun. You'll get the plasma, you'll get the ice gun, and then eventually you'll get something that's the plasma gun. So it's like shoot fire. But the boss battles themselves have like a puzzle type mechanic, which it's not just shoot these things. You have to figure out what visor is the best one to use. You have to figure out which weapon is the best one to use. Like one thing that I really did like, and which made boss fights a lot easier this time around, because I didn't really understand this going in, like when I first played the game on the GameCube. But like when you're just using like her regular beam cannon, if you hold it down and you hit R, the R1 or whatever, and you shoot a super missile, I always love using the super missiles. And you get such a low amount in the beginning of the game, but they're hidden all over the place in every zone. So finding those and finding energy tanks, just part of the exploration. Everything is so cleverly hidden, and what I like is that there's always a little cue about where those items are, because you'll just hear like this kind of like futuristic wow sound. So there's an item close by, and sometimes you just gotta like put a bomb somewhere, or you gotta shoot something specific. But the fact that they used each and every upgrade at some point, and they use it in a boss fight, it made everything fresh. And a lot of the boss fights I can't really remember all too well. I just remember how much I really liked fighting an elite pirate, or the Parasite Queen in the beginning of the game, which is like actually made that a stage in Super Smash Brothers, which is where I first remember that from. So
yeah,
but yeah, there's not too many bosses. I mean, there's more like smaller enemies like space pirates. those bat things, those spiky things. I really hate the fact that I can't remember a lot of the names right now because I'm such a huge Metroid fan. So I'm probably going to like lose a couple of points on my fan card here because I can't remember a lot of the enemies' names. But I scanned everything, so I I always like to try and get 100% completion by the time I beat the game. But a little bit of a spoiler: Ridley is one of my favorite boss fights. Once you actually get to that meta Ridley, I mean, because it's actually meta Ridley in this game. But like the only time that you can ever hit him is when his mouth is open, and that's when I just would like abuse fucking spam missiles like when I can, and it's kind of a long fight, but it's so much fun. It doesn't feel unfair, and plus Ridley's theme music is like top Metroid music of all time. Can't deny that. So I did like the fact that in a game like this, it's not an overabundance of bosses. Like this isn't Demon Souls, you know. It's not just boss. Like the bosses are cleverly placed right before you get an upgrade, so you know that I got to beat this guy, and then I'm going to get the next upgrade, and I'm going to make so much progress.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on there. Absolutely. So Matt, obviously we love this game. Like we love it. It's a great remaster. It's 100% worth the money. If you can go out and get it, or if you want to download it, I think that it's 100% worth the money. Do you think this means? Wait, what?
Oh, I was saying either way, digital or physically.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Just wanted to make sure. Just wanted to make sure I heard that right. I was like, okay. But so my question, I have a couple questions. One, do you think that this makes remasters of the other games likely? Do you think that this means that those are also coming?
I want to say yes. I want to say I. So the rumors way back then when Metroid Prime was first, the Metroid Prime trilogy was first rumored, was that the first game. So basically, they originally were going to release Metroid Prime trilogy, which was originally on the Wii. And then it turned into, well, Metroid Prime, the original game, is going to get a remaster, but Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are just going to be ports. So, but I think that there's a potential possibility with, because from what I've seen, Metroid Prime Remaster has been very successful. Like it's been like number one on the eShop charts for like the first 2-3 weeks, and I don't even think Nintendo was expecting that. So I really hope that they rethink that, because Metroid Prime 2 and 3 definitely deserve this type of attention and this type of remaster, because 2 is probably the weakest out of the three, because 2 has probably I would say the most repetitive like gameplay as far as like as far as backtracking goes, because I do remember like dropping the controller and stopping playing the game for weeks because I was just like so
Man was fucking. He was fucking over it. That's what he was. You were fucking over it.
I was. Metroid Prime 3, on the other hand, I can't tell you. I think that I played that game the most. I played and beat it the most, mostly because I was trying to get the secret ending. Plus, the controls on the Wii were fantastic with IR pointer controls, and using the nunchuck. You thrust it forward, and you can grab like shields off of like space pirates. But I really hope that they get the same treatment, because Metroid Prime as a trilogy right now is almost completely flawless. So plus it will definitely help build up the momentum to when we eventually get Metroid Prime 4, which was released originally announced almost 6 years ago.
And that was my next question for you was, do you think that this release and the hype around it, the good sales that it's done, do you think this maybe pressures Nintendo a little bit to, hey, people want this, maybe we should make it a priority?
Yeah, Metroid Prime 4, I honestly feel like is coming out this year, because even like roughly right before the Direct, before we got, the pre-orders went up for Tears of the Kingdom, that Direct, we got Tears of the Kingdom, we got the pre-order dates and Collector's Edition announced. Metroid Prime 4 was also, pre-orders were also going back up for Metroid Prime 4, so that's why a lot of people thought that we were going to see it at this Direct, and when we didn't see it, we were kind of surprised. But I do I feel like that Metroid Prime 4 is coming out this year, because the original concept of it that was being developed by a completely new studio was completely scrapped because Nintendo didn't like the way things were going, and they put Retro Studios back onto it. And Retro Studios has not released a game since Tropical Freeze on the Wii U back in like, oh, what year was that? That was so long ago. That was almost like 9 years ago, something like that. Yeah, that was the last game Retro Studios released. until Metroid Prime Remaster. So they've had their hands quite full. So I really hope that whatever summer event Nintendo has this year, since nobody's attending E3, that they are ready to show Prime 4. And I think one thing that is definitely to be expected if they show Prime 4, it's going to get a release date, and it's going to be this year.
I would be really, really excited if that was the case because, again, I did not love Metroid Dread. I wanted to. I really did go into that game wanting to love it, but I have absolutely enjoyed playing what I have of this game. Obviously, I've been a little busy, and I haven't been able to play enough of it. And that's going to change. That's going to change. I'm going to play more of it. But I absolutely love this game. I think that this, again, it just jumpstarts what's been, it punctuates what's been a really good start to the year for Nintendo. And Matt, we're not done yet because obviously Bayonetta Origins just released as of recording this, a day ago. So we're going to get to talk about that here soon as well. And that's doing really well it's doing really well critically, just like all the other releases so far this year. Your Fire Emblem Engage, Kirby Return to Dreamland, Octopath 2, Metroid Prime. All of these have done really, really well so far. And again, Tears of the Kingdom is still coming. And there's still so much more that we have no idea about coming later this year. So Nintendo has had a really, really good start to this year. I know that Kyle is going to listen to this episode, and he's going to be mad. He's going to be clenching his fists. He's going to be punching air. And I'm okay with that.
I'll say something like Nintendo or something like that.
He's going to say Sony does what Nintendo don't. Exactly. And in most years, that would be the case. In most years, that would be pretty fair. But this year, man, Nintendo is on a roll this year as far as the exclusives that have come out. So, again, really good start to the year. Metroid Prime Remaster is great. I think that's a good spot to go ahead and call this an episode. So that is going to wrap us up for our review of Metroid Prime Remastered. You can follow us on Twitter at SideMissionPod. You can also follow us on Facebook at Side Mission Podcast. Major shout out to Tabby, Thacker's girlfriend, because she's been doing the recording for these last 2 episodes. So we really appreciate her helping us out. My laptop is not in nearly a good enough state right now to be able to do it because my sound is fucked up. So thankfully she's been able to help, so we have to shout her out. But for Matt, I'm Rusty. For the 2 non-existent jackasses, thanks for listening.